The night settled over the city like a velvet curtain, soft and dark and shimmering with 1,000 forgotten wishes. Midnight had always held its own kind of magic. But tonight it felt different, warmer, closer, as if the moon itself leaned in to listen. On the rooftop where the world seemed to pause, Aria stepped into the silver glow, her breath catching as the cool breeze brushed against her skin. Across from her stood Elias, waiting by the low stone railing, his silhouette outlined by the soft glow of string lights they'd hung together weeks ago but never turned on until this moment. When she reached him, the lights flickered to life, casting a gentle golden halo around them, illuminating the quiet tremble in Aria's fingers and the subtle curve of Elias's shy smile. She didn't speak, not at first. Instead, she simply looked at him, really looked, taking in the way the night wrapped around him like he belonged to it. How the faint stubble along his jaw softened the serious lines of his face, how his eyes held entire galaxies of unspoken thoughts. He reached out slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, but Aria stepped forward until her palms rested on his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her touch. The city beneath them whispered and hummed, but here on this rooftop, time felt suspended. Elias lifted his hand to her face, his thumb brushing gently along her cheekbone, tracing the warmth rising there. She leaned into his touch instinctively, feeling herself melt into the tenderness he offered without asking for anything in return. And then, with a breath that trembled between anticipation and surrender, Aria tilted her face upward. Their lips met softly at first, just a feather-light touch, a question asked in silence. The taste of the moment was sweet, hesitant, tinged with a longing that neither of them had dared give voice to for years. Something in the air shifted, deepened. Elias cupped her face with both hands, drawing her gently closer, his touch reverent, almost fragile, as if he feared she might dissolve back into the shadows if he held her too firmly. Her fingers curled around the fabric of his shirt, clutching lightly, grounding herself in the warmth that radiated from him. The kiss deepened not with urgency but with emotion. Filled with every feeling they had swallowed for far too long, every late-night thought, every almost confession, every lingering glance that never found its courage. Around them, the soft glow of the rooftop lights danced on the night air, and even the wind seemed to quiet, respecting the moment. When they finally parted, breath mingling softly in the cool dark, neither spoke a word. They didn't have to. Everything had already been said in the gentle pressure of that kiss. In the way their foreheads rested together afterward, in the silent promise that whatever came next, it would begin with this midnight, this rooftop, this moment suspended between the stars and the city below. For a long moment, they simply held on to each other, letting the closeness settle between them like the final piece of a puzzle long missing. Aria's heart fluttered in a rhythm she could not control, a quiet rush of warmth spreading through her as Elias's hand slipped down to rest lightly on her waist, not claiming her, not pulling, just touching, grounding, reassuring. She closed her eyes and inhaled deeply, taking in the familiar scent of him, warm, a little like cedar, a little like rain, and somehow entirely like home. The rooftop around them seemed to fade into a blur, swallowed by the intimacy of their shared quiet. Below, the city lights sparkled like stars fallen to earth, but here, perched above the world, they felt completely alone, as if the world had stepped back to give them space to breathe, to be honest, to finally face the truth that had tied them together all these years. Elias pulled back slightly, his fingers brushing her hair behind her ear as his eyes searched hers, the softness in them messy and vulnerable. "I didn't plan this," he whispered, voice low and unsteady. "I didn't expect tonight to feel like everything." Aria felt her lips lift in a small, aching smile. "Maybe it was always supposed to," she murmured, her voice trembling as her truth escaped in pieces. She stepped closer, letting her forehead rest once again against his chest, feeling the rise and fall of his breathing beneath her cheek, letting the steady rhythm soothe her racing thoughts. Elias wrapped his arms around her, holding her gently but fully, his chin resting lightly on the top of her head. They swayed without music, the world spinning slowly around them. The warmth of his embrace seeped into her bones, unraveling years of loneliness she hadn't realized she carried. Minutes passed, or maybe hours, time blurred, soft as the breeze drifting across the rooftop. When Aria finally lifted her head, Elias brushed a soft kiss against her temple, featherlight, full of quiet affection that made her breath catch. "You don't have to run anymore," he whispered into her hair, and the trembling that followed surprised even her. She hadn't realized she was running, not exactly. Maybe she was hiding, maybe she was guarding herself, maybe she had convinced herself that the kind of love she craved didn't belong to people like her. But here, wrapped in the arms of a man who looked at her as if she hung the stars themselves, she realized how afraid she had been of being truly seen. She lifted her hand to his face, tracing the line of his jaw, the curve of his cheekbone. "And you don't have to wait anymore," she whispered back, her voice barely audible, but Elias heard every word. His hand slid up her back, pausing at her shoulder, drawing her closer once more. When they kissed again, it carried a different weight, a quiet certainty, a promise, a beginning. The world around them pulsed with possibility. The warmth of his lips moved in slow harmony with hers, gentle and profound, awakening feelings too deep for words. And though the kiss remained tender, its honesty left her breathless in a way no urgency ever could. When they finally parted, the rooftop lights flickered softly, reflecting the gentle glow in both of their eyes. The night grew quieter, as if settling around them with a protective hush, leaving Aria and Elias alone in a cocoon woven of starlight, soft breezes, and unspoken devotion. They moved to the small bench near the edge of the rooftop, where the city sprawled beneath them like an endless tapestry of glittering dreams. Aria sat with her knees pulled close, her fingers laced with Elias's as he settled beside her. Neither wanted to let go, not even for a heartbeat. Their joined hands rested between them, warm and steady, as if that single connection carried all the reassurance the world could offer. They talked then, not fast, not excitedly, but softly, with the honesty that only midnight can draw from two souls finally unburdened. Aria spoke of her fears, the shadows that had chased her through the years, the loneliness she had disguised as independence. Elias told her of the nights he had stood on this very rooftop, wondering if she felt the same pull he did each time their eyes lingered a little too long. Their words wove together into a tapestry of vulnerability, each confession drawing them closer, strengthening the invisible thread between them. The wind rustled softly, lifting a strand of Aria's hair and brushing it lightly against Elias's hand. Without thinking, he tucked it gently behind her ear again, his fingers lingering for a moment longer than necessary, tracing the warmth of her skin. She leaned into the touch with a small, contented sigh, her eyes drifting shut. Elias watched her, taking in the softness of her features, the relaxed curve of her lips, and he knew in that moment that he never wanted to spend another night without her beside him, not in silence, not in longing, not in unspoken dreams. When she opened her eyes, their gazes locked, and something deep and steady passed between them, an understanding that didn't need words. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed the back of it gently, reverently, like a promise carved into the moment. Aria's breath hitched as warmth blossomed in her chest. She turned toward him fully, her knees brushing his, her free hand lightly resting over his heart. "What happens now?" she whispered, not in fear but in wonder. Elias smiled, a slow, tender smile that reached his eyes. "Whatever you want. Whatever we choose. Together." The word together echoed in her heart like a melody she had waited her whole life to hear. She leaned forward, and he met her halfway, their lips brushing in a soft, lingering kiss that carried none of the uncertainty of before. It was gentle, warm, full of promise. When they parted, Aria rested her head on his shoulder, and Elias wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. The city lights shimmered below as if celebrating their quiet beginning. The moon drifted higher, casting its silver blessing over them. And as the night deepened, the two of them remained on the rooftop, wrapped in warmth, in quiet laughter, in shared dreams whispered softly into the dark. It felt like the start of forever, peaceful, steady, and beautifully real. Midnight had brought them together, but it was the love growing between them that would carry them into every dawn that followed.